as a dad, I was touched too when you talk about the birth of your son.
Yeah.
And before, when your wife was pregnant, thinking about
Yeah.
what he would look like,
Yeah.
and seeing him for the first time.
Yeah.
Talk about God's love in that sense as a father.
Well, we can talk about God's love all we want, but you have to experience it. So I'm into truth, I'm into experience. The truth is, God gave his little boy Jesus to be with you. And we can know that and clap and say that's great. But then there's moments in our lives where we genuinely experience that and are brought to our knees and just weep. When my oldest boy was born, man, that's what happened. It was like, God, man, like, here comes this little boy. And he was conceived the night I shared with my wife that I was struggling with pornography. So here I am, an idiot. I'm thinking I'm going to get thrown out of the house. She's going to want to divorce me. She says, I'll love you like crazy, but I hate what you've been doing. And we're intimate, and my son is conceived, and then he's born. And I'm looking at this, my wife's half Chinese, and I'm looking at this little red-haired Chinese boy with my forehead and her eyes, the most beautiful thing in the world. And I'm thinking, how did you make this? Why were you so nice to me? Why did you do this? And there's a verse in the Bible that's so cool. It says, for it's God's kindness that leads us to repentance. And I think, he has a side to him that does have wrath, and it does have a tough side to him, but he has this side of grace and this side of giving you something you don't deserve that totally blows your socks off. So I look at this little boy who's done neither good or bad, and I'm just weeping, and he's holding and he's squeezing my pinky, and he's all quiet because he's hearing his dad's voice, and the doctor says, hey man, get away from him. You got to let him cry. He's heard your voice before. You've been talking to him. It was one of the most powerful moments in my life, and I thought, I'd give this little kid for nobody. I wouldn't give this kid for my best friend or somebody that I loved. But here God gave his little boy for me when I was separated from him and didn't want anything to do with him and really was kind of his enemy. And he's like, no, I'm going to redeem you and repair a relationship, and I'm going to do it because I love you, and you're going to be transformed by my kindness. And it was a time where I experienced that. I didn't just talk about it or say, oh, here's the gospel, let me give it to you in a 4-page format. It was a time where I just talked and experienced and listened and heard God and just sat with him and just looked at my son, and I knew what love was, and I was just baffled. There's a place in the Bible where it says sometimes we're just to hang and just stand in awe with him, and just think about him. And I would look at my son, and I didn't have any words for God. I couldn't say anything to him. I was just like, that's my little boy, man. And what was I gonna do? It's like I was just experiencing what he did for me on the cross, man. And it was everything to me. It was probably the most powerful time in my life.